Hi, my name is Jake. This is Elias, and we're from Curtis Institute. Today we'll be playing the first two movements of Prokofiev First Violin Sonata. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful performance. It's nice to see you guys up here in New York as opposed down in Philadelphia. Um, Tell me a little bit about your collaboration as an ensemble and also how long you guys have been working on this sonata.
I've been working on it for a while, and we've been working together like some other stuff at Curtis, and he's now at Juilliard, so.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do you know about the sonata? What do you know about the genesis of this? What do you love about Prokofiev? Tell me your feelings about these pieces.
There's so much like atmosphere going on, and all about like texture, and he writes that like some specific parts, like he wants it to sound like Graveyard Over the Wind. That kind of like atmosphere, it's really like interesting, and
Sure.
I just generally love Prokofiev. So.
Sure, of course. Is it Elias or Elias? Elias. Have you played any of his piano concertos?
Yes,
The second one. I assume that kind of angularity is very much ingrained in the articulation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you played both concertos or one of them? Yeah. So Prokofiev was obviously a wonderful composer, but he was known as being an absolute nightmare. Of a student, of a collaborator, as a friend. I mean, there are stories of him in conservatory where, he'd be in a theory class or something, and he'd hear his classmates give a wrong answer, and he'd write every wrong reply down, and he'd find a way, even months later, he'd store it in his memory, and he'd come up with an idea of some way to needle his friends with their idiocy. So he was really, really a horrible person in many ways. But there are a few moments where he shows you that he actually does have some humanity. So in the performance that you just gave, I very much got the sense that you understood that he was a brute at times. I think we have to remember that he's not just an ogre. There are some moments where there's sensitivity and there's singing, and we have to show those glimpses where he's still a person. Also, I mentioned the whole articulation thing. I think, for me, articulation is the key to unlock all of Prokofiev's music. He's very specific. Sometimes it's dashes, sometimes it's like a dot where you don't expect it, essentially. And very often he has you playing at different dynamics or different articulations. And I think you guys are wonderful collaborators, and you are maybe a little too sensitive to each other. And I think you have to be a little bit more of a good soldier for some of these markings. But I want to work first on Prokofiev's heart. So let's start in the second movement.
Sure.
So obviously it's very brutalistic for a lot of music, and then he has certain moments. This like forte eroico section, and then of course at the very end it comes back in a much more restrained way, right? So I would love to hear a complete contrast between these different versions of that. So let's start with the first one. In my part, I don't have measure numbers, but you know where that is, right?
Yeah.
And as a quick note, Jake, just to keep in mind, I find, obviously, this is an enormous instrument. It's very hard to compete with the amount of sound there. A little trick for violinists to overcome that is, instead of trying to sustain in the same way or to overcome, focus on the start of notes, dum, bum, and then crescendo to the very end.
Sure.
So supposedly Prokofiev was inspired to write this sonata. Well, first of all, this is his first sonata, but actually it's the second one that he wrote. He wrote, of course, the flute one first, and then he came back to this one. He was inspired to write this one after he fell in love with a Handel sonata, violin and piano sonata or keyboard sonata. I think that kind of more Baroque articulation is needed sometimes in this kind of music. So, Elias, you have this really interesting bottom, bottom. Can we hear just your part where you have just a little bit more of the two-note slurs? It's almost, you know how like in Mozart or Handel or Haydn, those sonatas, like there's a little bit of cupping at the end of each one. I think that is the right articulation, and also it'll make Jake's life a little bit easier. Can we try one more time? And better with the articulation, I think anytime we have these ties to, hold over notes, really treat those as like the most emotional part. I love that little kind of scalloped element to that. I think that's great. He shows us that he has a heart. He says espressivo sometimes. It's not just marcatissimo and all that kind of stuff. Whenever either of you has espressivo, how are you thinking of changing the sound there? What are your tools? How do you make that different?
I was thinking more like linear.
Linear, yeah, sure. Whereas before it's bum, 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 bum. Great. What about you, Elias?
I was going to say similar, but I think much longer shape and line.
Sure. I find a nice little trick for that kind of thing, because we are so stuck in this like pillars of rhythm. If you treat that as more a license to be very free rhythmically. So I treat that as kind of more rubato, bum, ba, da, dum, that kind of thing. I think that'll begin to set across this, the pillar versus the freedom. Try one more time with all this stuff together. Wonderful. So this is the sort of prototype of this music, right? Yeah. I want to skip to the very end where he very much has it not in eroico. He wants it to be a much more kind of intimate idea. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear a much more clear difference in this version. Maybe at the end of your little cadenza thing, or the a tempo thing. Here, we no longer have to worry about competing with the sound of the piano, right? Yeah. I think you can now force Elias to play in a certain way, because you're not in the forte realm. I think, before I talked to you about this articulation, that's a way to stand out. Yeah. Now, sing in that long, beautiful line that you want to, and force him to stay down. there, remind me, this is a new violin for you, right? Yeah. So obviously, as we get used to new instruments, we have to adapt and things like that. Is there space to save and develop the sound even more slowly?
Yeah.
Can I just hear you do some? So this is, again, obviously Prokofiev was writing from the piano part. In these moments, it's our opportunity to take back the singing element of being like, we're not a decaying instrument. We have the cantabile that everybody hopes for. I would encourage you to use less bow speed at the very beginning of the bow change so that it really feels like you are this opera singer. I think it's supposed to be very different from the piano. Can you try it one more time? Yeah, I think that contrast, before we've been heroico, this pianistic thing, and here you get to be the proper violinist. Let's try one final time. Excellent. So having these clear images in your head of, okay, the first version is this, and then this is the total opposite, we have to keep that in mind as we're playing it for the first time. Great. So we know Prokofiev has a heart. Excellent. I want to go back to a section where he, I think by his own account, supposedly at the premiere when Oistrakh and Oborin were rehearsing, apparently Oborin was playing a certain section too sensitively, and he said, Maestro, I'm going to cover up the violinist if I play it as you marked. And he says, I don't care. I want you to play as a madman. So we have to have certain sociopathic elements in certain sections. Jake, you mentioned this section about, he wanted something to sound like wind whistling through a graveyard. I think that's a perfect example of you have to be totally unaware of each other. You are distant, you don't care about anything else. You know what this is in the first movement, right? You have piano, right? You have piano portamento, and you have pianissimo freddo, which is, I've never seen that marking before. So as we try and search for the sound of wind whistling through a graveyard, how did you come across that sound?
I was going more towards fingerboard and more sort of
Sure.
just more bow speed.
Yeah. In your performance, I found it to be too beautiful. I mean that as a compliment, but also a criticism.
Yeah.
I think we have to go more towards the kind of metallic way. So this is a very cheap trick, but I have actually found that different mutes can help solve your problem instead of having to change anything. So obviously you're using a typical mute. I wouldn't. Yeah. Do you want to try?
Is it metal one?
It is a metal one, so you can either do that on the bridge, or there's also I have a different one that's metal. Yeah, it might be too tight. And if you don't want that one, I have a different metal one too.
It's kind of too tight.
Yeah, no problem. You can try this one if you want.
Can you put it in middle like that?
Anywhere, yeah, middle or, yeah, great. Actually, can we just hear some of those things? Great, yeah. So I find as we're searching for different colors, of course we try and create them ourselves, but sometimes just buying a new color is worthwhile. But yeah, as you interpret pieces like this, you have to find your little cheat codes. Great, so now that we have the baseline of the color set, you're marked a dynamic below Elias here, right? I think the whole point is that we're not supposed to know the shape of what you're doing. So both in your posture, in how you project everything, I think it has to be this slightly unclear thing. So don't worry too much about doing lots and lots of crescendos. I think it should just be hovering beneath the surface. And Elias, do not pay any attention to him. Sing as you wish, and he will adapt. Beautiful. I think, Elias, you should. Well, what's your image? How do you understand this music?
I think even though it needs to be singing, I kind of imagine it so it should almost sound very pale.
Yeah.
In a way that's so without too much involvement, almost kind of envisioning something that's happening above.
Yeah. 100%. I absolutely get that image. Can we try a version where you give 5% more phrasing?
Yeah.
I agree, it's a kind of church chant miles away, but there should be some sense that there's still something. I don't know. Great, yeah, great. To me, I think it still accomplishes that distance that you want, but it really helps us understand it in 3 dimensions, as opposed to just one ensemble. It's like, oh, you're doing your own thing. That's great. I want to end with our articulation journey. So, Jake, we share a common teacher in Ida. We all pray at the altar of Saint Ida in articulation and all these, the crispness of bow strokes. I think you are, in certain sections, maybe playing with a little bit too much legato. Yeah, wonderful for Schubert, maybe not so much for Prokofiev. I would love to try some of the opening one more time. He has a really interesting marking where it's 8th note without any marking, and then 8th note with a dot, right? Dum, bum. How do you understand? Why did he choose to do that?
It should be kind of shocking in a way. The second note, it's on the beat, so
Yeah, I totally agree. I find in trying to specify the exact articulation, you have to think about every single moment. What's happening just before that dot, what's happening at the very end of the dot, and what's happening at the very next note. So how are you thinking of it?
It's sort of, the first note I play is it's irregular, it's like off the beat, so it should be kind of not really related to what he does. I thought so. And kind of like surprised.
Yeah. I got a little bit too much of it's just a pickup to the trill.
No, cool.
So I think of it as having its own integrity.
Sure.
Actually, let's try it without Elias, just these first couple sections. Can you try having more, think of the dot more at the very start of the second note? We're getting the rest, which I think is good, but we're not getting the start. Can you try stopping the bow before the second note? This is one of those very unviolinistic, very inhuman types of markings, right? So everything about it, it's the duration of the note, how he marks it, it's not usual. I think starting on the string is going to be helpful. Maybe don't think of it as pickups, each note is its own idea. Great, and then there are different things, and then later on we have these, the dashes, right? How do you understand dashes underneath Prokofiev's?
More like spoken.
Yes, yeah, it's like a slightly softened accent, right? It's not a legato marking. Great. I want to hear this entire first page until the tempo primo. And really, each of you pay attention exactly to all the slurs. Elias, you have a slur in whatever, the 6th bar, and then all of a sudden on the mezzo forte you have no slur, right? Be just good soldier, obey orders, don't care about phrasing, just do exactly as he says, and I think that'll make a lot more sense. Great. You did exactly as I asked for, so thank you very much. Now I'm going to contradict myself. The the very opening, Elias, how do you think about the connection of the notes or the disconnection of the notes? Is there a phrase, or is it just sort of it unfolds?
I think the first four bars always connected. I think I still imagine more of a connected but spoken quality.
Connected but spoken quality, yeah.
It's very, it's like I can't really think right now.
No, it's okay. Do you hear the music as having existed before you start playing, or do you conjure it from in the moment?
I think it's actually in the moment.
I agree. I totally agree. And I would love to hear a little bit more discovery of each kind of mini harmony. These little 3-note gestures, I think, are his mind working. So give us a little bit more unease at what's about to happen. Great, beautiful, yeah. This sense, these like giant chimes, I think they have to ring in eternity in a different way that we normally would from any other piece. So don't worry about his sustain, don't worry about anything else except for everything that's in your music. Yeah, beautiful. We could go so far in depth, but I think we're basically out of time. My biggest thing for you is just make sure you know exactly when you're supposed to be playing together and then completely ignore each other when you're not. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you guys.